My in-laws have moved to a new designer apartment and are living freely. One morning, my father-in-law scolded me for not being able to see her husband off. Why didn't you see your husband off to work? What were you thinking? I got a call for work and just couldn't see him off. When I answered, my mother-in-law gave me a sarcastic smile. You know, I always say that just drying at home is not a job. You're like a parasite. What? My father-in-law also put me under pressure. I'm sure our son, who works well outside the home, earns more. You should respect your husband and support him more, you useless wife. I couldn't stand their words anymore. Why do my in-laws, who are living in my house without paying any living expenses, have to abuse me so much? When I said, I cannot respect my husband, my mother-in-law looked shocked. Well, I can't believe it. Someone who talks like that isn't family. A stranger should leave. That's right. We'll live here with our son. You leave. We can pay a rent of $300. I was momentarily stunned. $300 a month for rent? What are these people talking about? But having been spoken to like this, I decided not to care about what happens next. Fine, I'll leave. Afterward, they would face a hard time. My name is Kathy Brown, a 30-year-old working from home. I am working as a graphic designer. My business is doing well, and frankly, I earn quite a good income. My husband, Tom, is a regular office worker, and we've been married for 3 years. Even after marriage, he would help with household chores if I asked. But he seems to tell his male friends that household chores are a woman's job, so I let my wife do it. He has a vain side. I only realized this after getting married. Tom and I used to live in a regular rental apartment, but one day, there was a water leak from the floor above. We tried to move the furniture and appliances to save them, but some were damaged or became unusable. After discussions with the landlord, it was decided that they would be able to move after receiving a small amount of compensation. Hey, Kathy, why don't we move here next? Tom happily said, showing me the website of a 4-route designer's apartment near the station with a rent of $3,000. Our rent used to be $1,200, more than double the amount. I'd rather save the money for our future children. I've always wanted to live in a house like this. If we combine our incomes, living here wouldn't be difficult, right? But if you live in such a sophisticated place, you might get more motivation for work. If it's too much, we can move somewhere else. Please. I couldn't refuse after hearing that. And we didn't have the leisure to look for a house slowly. Following Tam's suggestion, I started to look forward to living in a stylish home and agreed to sign the contract in his name and help with the payments. So, we moved to the new designer's apartment. The apartment was truly beautiful and stylish. Indeed, it did boost my motivation for work. However, even while enjoying this life, I had concerns. The cause of my worries was my in-laws, who had become closer due to the move. My father-in-law, Dan, who had just turned 60, took early retirement and was at home every day. My mother-in-law, Helen, had never worked and was a housewife. Frankly, my relationship with my in-laws was not good. For example, when I recently visited their apartment, Tom, glad you could make it. Come on in, greeted Tam's parents with smiles, completely ignoring me standing beside him. Hello, father or mother. As I hesitantly greeted them, my mother-in-law glared at me. Oh, Kathy, you were here? My in-laws only need their son, whom they love, and it seems they don't need me at all. As I was about to sit down doing nothing, my father-in-law said, Hey, make some snacks for the drinks. It was still daytime, and yet my father-in-law ordered me around so arrogantly. Looking at my mother-in-law, she was busy taking photos with Tom for social media, seemingly unconcerned. She was in her 50s and obsessed with social media, apparently having a decent number of followers. I knew her account and saw her constantly posting pictures of luxury brands and accessories, despite living in a cheap apartment. I wondered how she managed that, but it turned out she was registered with a luxury brand rental service, making it look like she owned these items. Maybe Tom inherited his pretentious personality from his mother. Eventually, I stood up and made some snacks for my father-in-law. What's this? The taste is too bland to be a snack, he complained while eating the food I had made. Hearing that, my mother-in-law looked at me and said, You really can't do anything, can you? Haha, poor Tom, having such a useless wife. All the while, my husband pretended not to hear. Since the beginning of our marriage, he had always wanted to please his parents. Though we moved and became closer, we were still living separately. I thought it best not to involve myself too much with them. That's what I had been thinking. A month after Tom and I moved, an incident happened on a day approaching our wedding anniversary. My wedding anniversary was just approaching, so I bought a lot of ingredients to have a small celebration at home and was about to toast. The door opened without the entrance intercom ringing. Father, mother, today is your wedding anniversary celebration, right? That's why we came. I couldn't believe Tom's words, but he happily invited them in. Before I could ponder why the door had opened on its own, I was startled by the sight of my in-laws in the entrance, carrying large bags. Father, mother, what's going on? And those big bags. Ignoring me, my mother-in-law entered the house and exclaimed, "Oh, the stylishness of a designer's apartment is wonderful. Living in such a fabulous home is like a dream." What? Then my father-in-law added, "Didn't Tom tell you? We've given up the apartment and our stuff will be here tomorrow. From today, you'll take proper care of us, as a wife should." Wait, what are you talking about, Tom? When I looked at Tom, he explained with a frown, "Actually, it was time to renew my parents' apartment lease. We have unused rooms here, so I thought, why not live together?" What? When my mother-in-law saw my reaction, she said to me with a scared look on her face, "What's with that face? Do you have a problem with us living here?" That's right. That's right. What's the complaint? From today, this is our home. Such. And so, from this day on, I was forced to live with my in-laws. Life afterwards was a continuous struggle. My father-in-law gave me orders in an overbearing manner, forcing me to buy alcohol and doing chores. There was even a time when he threw laundry in my face. It seems that to my father-in-law, I was nothing more than a servant. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, as if to boast about living here, took pictures of the apartment and posted them on social media with captions like "our new home." They started using my clothes and shoes without permission, escalating their show-off behavior even further. Whenever I tried to speak up, both of them would say things that denied my personality. I was utterly exhausted by these daily occurrences. "The way your father and mother treat me is too awful." I complained to my husband Tom when he returned from work, but he just placated me without much thought. I was feeling discontent, not just with my in-laws who were the source of my stress, but also with Tom, who wouldn't take me seriously. One day, when I was almost at my mental limit, Tom came home irritated in the middle of a weekday. "What's wrong, Tom? What happened?" "Today, my company told me that I would be transferred to an affiliated retail store. Transfer was just a word, but it turned out to be a layoff." While loosening his tie, Tom sat roughly on the sofa. "That's terrible. A transfer means things will get harder, won't it?" Tom replied grumpily. "No, I'm not accepting the transfer. I told them it must be some kind of joke. That's why I got angry and quit the company right now." What? I was shocked, but Tom looked as if it was the most natural thing. Of course, going to a retail store, my pride wouldn't allow it. Don't just decide things like that on your own. What about the rent for this place? If you had followed the company's orders and transferred, at least you wouldn't have lost your job. Even as I vented my anger at him, Tom said as if it was nothing, "Your income is nearly $10,000 a month, right? That should be enough to live on. So I'm counting on you for the living expenses and the monthly rent of $3,000. What? What are you talking about? And don't tell Dad and Mom about this. I don't want to worry them. Well, I plan to find a new job soon, so don't worry too much." I was really angry, but I couldn't just abandon my unemployed husband right away. From that day on, in addition to housework, I had to pay the living expenses and rent for 4 people by myself. As for Tom, he would leave the house every morning in a suit, trying not to let his parents realize he had quit his job. At first, I thought he was looking for a job, but he didn't return home all day. When I followed him, I found out he was gambling with his unemployment benefits. Even after a fierce argument, Tom didn't seem to change his mind. Instead, he started making sarcastic comments about me being busy with work. One day, while living such a life, Tom was arrogantly reading the newspaper at the dining table, dressed in his suit. I had been working until late at night, so I was rushing around since the morning. I managed to prepare breakfast for my late-rising in-laws and Tom, and while doing the dishes in the kitchen, my mother-in-law spoke to me in a displeased tone. "Kathy, this fried egg is too hard." What? I made it as usual though. Then, my father-in-law said, "I only eat soft-boiled fried eggs. Make it again, now." What? Just as I was about to argue, a call came in from a client, so I answered the phone. Tom, perhaps jealous that I was busy, clicked his tongue, gave me a cold look, and left the house without eating his breakfast. Finally, when I hung up the phone, my in-laws were standing in front of me with crossed arms, looking puzzled. "Father, mother, is there something you need? You need to get your act together. How could you not see off your husband when he's going to work?" I answered timidly, despite being scared by my father-in-law's stern tone. "I got a call for work. I couldn't see him off. Then my mother-in-law laughed derisively. You know, I always say that just drying at home is not a job. You're like a parasite. What? Father-in-law added pressure. Obviously, our son's income from working outside is better. Respect your husband more, you useless wife. Respect Tom, who quit his job on a whim and doesn't even try to find a new one. Why do I have to be berated so much by my in-laws who freeload in my house without contributing to expenses? I can't take it anymore. As my anger boiled over, I told them, you two wouldn't understand, but I cannot respect my husband. As I spoke loudly and clearly, my in-laws looked shocked, their faces turning increasingly red. Well, I can't believe it. Someone who talks like that isn't family. A stranger should leave. That's right. We'll live with our son, so you get out. We can pay about $300 for rent. I was momentarily dumbfounded. $300 for rent? What are these people talking about? The actual rent is 10 times that. $3,000, isn't it? However, having been spoken to like this, I decided not to care about what happens next. Understood. I will leave. Thus, I ignored my taunting in-laws, packed my belongings, and left the house. After that, I stayed in a weekly apartment. A few weeks later, my husband Tom suddenly called me. There were several missed calls, and reluctantly, I answered the phone. Tom wanted to meet and talk. I thought it was necessary to eventually speak with Tom, so I agreed. To my surprise, Tom arrived at the restaurant with his parents. Before I could ask about the situation, Tom hastily started speaking. Hey, Kathy, what do you mean by getting a divorce? I won't accept it. Don't you dare divorce me without my consent. Oh, you saw the divorce papers I sent. As I replied calmly, my in-laws glared at me. Meanwhile, Tom turned pale. I sighed and spoke to him. Without any consultation, your parents moved in and have been harassing and insulting me every day. You never listened to my complaints, did you? Such a thing for? What do you mean by such a thing? You don't understand how much I've suffered, do you? Tom faltered for a moment at my sharp words but retorted as if fighting back. Don't think you can just get a divorce for that. I won't agree to it. My in-laws seemed puzzled that Tom showed no signs of agreeing to the divorce. Tom, why don't you want to leave such a person? That's right. We said we could pay about $300 for rent, didn't we? We start a bill and we can afford that much. At their words, I couldn't help but laugh. My in-laws stared at me, puzzled. What's so funny? I see. The $300 bill was for the monthly parking fee. Haha. What? My in-laws looked shocked. My mother-in-law timidly whispered, then, how much is the actual rent? I showed them the rent bill right then and there. $3,000. As my in-laws grew increasingly pale, I said to them, you said you'd pay the rent, right? Tom is the lessee, so good luck with that. Haha. As I spoke cheerfully, my father-in-law answered, trembling. Humph, Tom can pay that much, can he? Right, Tom? Tom, already pale, was turned to by everyone. As Tom remained silent, I decided to reveal the truth. This man is actually unemployed. How do you plan to pay $3,000 for rent? Haha, what? I explained Tam's situation to his astonished parents. How Tom had quit his job suddenly without any consultation a while ago, and that there was hardly any savings left. Really, Tom? My mother-in-law, in a fluster, asked Tom, who weakly nodded. Then my father-in-law, trembling, asked, so, how have you been paying the rent and living expenses until now? I've been paying you all with my income, which you all despised as paintings and parasites, right? Such. We didn't know that. My mother-in-law cried out hysterically. Then Tom began to apologize with his head on the table. Kathy, I'm sorry. Please come back. I can't live without you. What about your parents? They don't seem sorry, do they? As I said that, Tom strongly urged his parents to apologize. We are sorry. Watching them mutter tremblingly, I had already decided what to say next. I don't intend to come back, and I want a divorce. I will never forgive you two either. We will never meet again. So. Tom finally broke down in tears, and I left the place after witnessing his parents trembling. Afterward, I divorced Tom through a lawyer. Regarding the property division, I successfully received most of the assets as compensation for alimony, leaving Tom with almost nothing. Next, I exposed the actions of my in-laws on my social media account. As a result, my mother-in-law's account went up in flames, and she eventually had to delete her account. They could not continue living in a designer apartment whose monthly rent was $3,000, and they were kicked out for non-payment of rent. Eventually, they moved into a shabby apartment and started living together as a trio. Tom seemed to have found a new job, but with a lower salary than before, he couldn't support his parents. My father-in-law was forced to work in a factory to earn money, busy working all day long. My mother-in-law, having shut down her social media account, lost the energy to go outside. My father-in-law forced into hard labor, and Tom living with them as a single man. They are likely to continue living a harsh life. Meanwhile, after the divorce, I moved to a designer's apartment suitable for singles and started living alone. The stress decreased, my work progressed smoothly, and I recently started keeping a cat that I love. From now on, I intend to build my life positively. How could you act so bossy for only $300K payment? Back then, I heard shockingly unbelievable words from my eldest son's wife. The $300K she referred to was about the newly built apartment I had fully paid for. Having bought them a new apartment, why must I be subjected to such harsh words? Years ago, when my husband passed away, raising 2 children alone was incredibly challenging. Indeed, at that time, the economic bubble had burst and everything was in recession. It was a tough period. During those times, dual-income households were becoming common, but finding full-time jobs while raising children was especially challenging for women. Most women could only find part-time jobs. Despite these hardships, I managed to support our living and eventually purchased a new apartment for my eldest son and his wife. I decided to buy the apartment thinking about the challenges they might be facing. However, my eldest son's wife showed no gratitude and even criticized me. Hurt by her words, I conveyed my feelings to my eldest son, hoping he'd stand up for me. Even if your mother is treated this way, don't you consider my feelings? Why don't you say anything? But his response was far from what I expected. Jokingly, he said, "Mom, if you have so many complaints, how about stopping the payments?" I was deeply shocked by these words and decided to cut off financial assistance to them immediately. I get it. Since you've said so, I'll gladly stop the payments. My name is Kathy Smith. I'm turning 53 this year. I raised 2 sons, Mike, the eldest, and Simon, the youngest, all by myself. I got married at 20, and Mike was born 2 years later. 3 years after that, Simon was born. Back then, we were a very happy family, and everything was going well. My husband worked for a small to medium-sized company. Although he didn't earn a high salary, we creatively made the most of our days. I, being a housewife, would frequently check supermarket flyers and occasionally cycle to a neighboring town for sale items. Still, as payday approached, our wallet would get thin. It was evident from our meals, which would become simple and frugal before payday. Yet, our hearts were filled with joy, spending each day with our precious family. When Simon turned 3, although we wanted another child, my husband tragically died in an accident. I didn't have time to grieve. To support my children, I worked tirelessly every day. Back then, there weren't many dual-income families, and the only available work for a woman raising kids was low-paid part-time jobs. Though night jobs paid better, I resisted them as a mother raising elementary school kids. Being a non-regular employee meant no bonuses. We managed daily expenses, but unexpected costs were challenging. I managed to buy a school backpack for Mike, but by the time Simon started school, our finances were even tighter. Unable to buy him a new backpack, he got teased for using a hand-me-down, and his elder brother Mike became a target too for standing up for him. Desperate to increase income, I began an affiliate marketing side business using the computer of my late husband. I had little knowledge about it, but researched online, set up a blog, and added affiliate links. Could I earn money from something like this? Skeptical, I continued blogging. Surprisingly, my blog became popular, earning me the title Queen of Affiliate Marketing. To my astonishment, I started getting magazine interviews and seminar invitations, which increased my income. Thanks to this, I gradually overcame our financial difficulties. My sons grew up, especially Mike, made youthful mistakes, but we enjoyed our family time. However, as my income increased, I became complacent. I started attending more external activities and seminars. I often left home and gave my children more money. Go ahead and eat what you like. I'll be home late again today, dear. During my absence, Mike began to hang out with bad friends and occasionally caused problems. At such times, my second son, Simon, gave me some advice. Mom, you should stop giving Mike money so easily. His friends might be taking money from him. These words made me reflect upon the bond as a family. Mike and Simon, my two sons, were as different as night and day. After an incident involving a school backpack during his junior high days, Simon began to despise and avoid those who openly discriminated or bullied others. This experience shaped him into a kind and justice-driven young man. However, this sense of justice created a slight rift between Simon and Mike, especially when Simon couldn't understand why Mike, in his mid-20s, still wandered aimlessly without a stable job. Mike would find a job only to quit soon after, spending his days playing with friends. Concerned, Simon advised, Mike, you should find a proper job and lead a stable life. As a mother, it was hard for me to see my son like this. I introduced Mike to a publishing company through my connection, but he repeatedly missed work without notice and eventually resigned. This company had deep ties with my acquaintance, and I had published blog-related books through them. Filled with regret, I deeply apologized to them. Apologizing for an adult child's behavior made me feel very ashamed. I'm not good at being bossed around by others. That's why I want to start something on my own, Mike said. After that, he ventured into several businesses, all of which I funded. But they all failed. Particularly in a network marketing venture, Mike involved Simon selling products forcefully to Simon's friends. This led our family to apologize to many people. This incident completely soured the relationship between Mike and Simon. After this turmoil, Mike decided to marry a girlfriend he met through network marketing. I decided to support their new life, hoping marriage might bring him a sense of responsibility. I financed their new apartment and the establishment of a wine bar in New York City, which Mike wanted to open. However, the business struggled, and I kept having to cover losses. Every time I visited Mike's place, I saw his brother-in-law and his friends drinking. They were the main patrons, with few other customers. Mike clearly admired this brother-in-law, who always stood out. Seeing Mike joining them in drinking made me wonder. One day, when financially burdened, I consulted Simon. He offered to help and said, "Let me look into Mike's affairs. Just wait a bit." A week later, he accompanied me to Mike's bar. We once again saw them enjoying drinks. I kept pondering how to resolve this situation but couldn't find an answer. My feelings for my sons remained unchanged, and I wished to break this cycle. I hoped for Mike to lead a more stable life. I approached Mike slowly and said, "Mike, if things continue like this, I might have to close this little bar. I've helped in many ways, but I'm not doing charity." To my surprise, Mike's wife reacted more than Mike. Drunkenly, she slurred, "Why are you suddenly so serious? If you want more customers, why not promote the shop more or bring your friends? It's ridiculous to say you'll close just because you don't have customers." I felt something off about her words. "But when you came to ask me for financial support, didn't you promise that both you and Mike would work hard together? And yet, I see both of you drinking together. What does this mean?" Initially, communicating with my eldest son's wife was a bit awkward. But at that moment, I had something I desperately wanted to convey. Almost every day, I would see her and my brother-in-law cheerfully drinking together, and I couldn't help but wonder about their intentions. I couldn't resist asking her about it. I wasn't sure how she would respond, but instead, her brother answered, "Kathy, why are you bringing this up all of a sudden? We are co-owners of this shop, and if it fails, it will tarnish our reputation. To prevent that, we need your cooperation too." He replied with a hint of arrogance while relaxing in his chair. His response lacked a sense of responsibility and compassion as an adult and family member, and it sounded entirely careless to me. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Mike's wife chimed in. "Kathy, are you struggling with how to spend money? If so, we can help you out a bit. I was irritated by her condescending remark, but I tried to control my emotions. However, I couldn't help but retort emotionally. Why would you say that? I've financially supported both this shop and your new apartment. I've provided ample assistance without any conditions, so why do I have to be spoken that way? I suddenly remembered the financial struggles and worries I had as a child. Just because I don't have money problems now doesn't mean I should forgive everything. I was questioning this perspective. Then Mike's wife said something outrageous to me. The amount for the apartment and the startup of this shop isn't that significant. Why are you so grateful for it? Or do you want us to be grateful to you? Her words deeply shocked me. How could they consider the money I had earnestly earned and provided them with as insignificant? Regardless of the amount, I was taken aback by their lack of gratitude. If that's how you feel, I'll stop my payments. Feeling upset, I decided to leave the shop with Simon. As we were leaving, I heard the eldest son's wife taunt from behind. What? Running away when your position gets worse? Such a coward. I had no desire to respond and left the shop. A few days later, I received a call from Mike and his wife asking me to visit their shop. After the previous incident, I felt foolish to continue financially supporting them, so I decided to halt all payments. As a result, their debts accumulated, and it seemed that Mike and his wife were getting numerous reminders about their unpaid bills. Though reluctant, I decided to respond to Mike's summons. When I told Simon about it, he assured me, "It's okay. I'll go with you." His words gave me courage, and we both headed to Mike's shop. Upon arrival, not only were Mike and his wife there, but surprisingly, his brother-in-law was present too. "Hello, Kathy. This is just a regular meeting, right? Why did you bring a strong backup?" His wife's brother teased upon seeing Simon. Hearing this, Mike clarified, "That's my brother." Since my family and Mike's brother-in-law hadn't properly met since Mike's wedding, he had probably forgotten about Simon. To that, Simon reintroduced himself. "Hello everyone, I'm Simon Smith, Mike Smith's younger brother. I'm a lawyer." To Mary, Mike's wife, and Mr. Cata Brown, Mary's brother, "I have some serious matters to discuss. There are allegations of fraud and embezzlement against you." The room filled with an atmosphere of shock. Mike especially looked stunned and hurriedly questioned Simon. "Wait, Simon? Since when did you become a lawyer? You were still a student last time." Back when Mike was involved in a network business, Simon was still in high school. Since the incident, the brothers had grown distant and had hardly met. Thus, Mike seemed unaware of Simon's career path. Keeping his composure, Simon replied, "Yes, while we were distant, quite some time has passed. I graduated and became a lawyer. By the way, Mary, I looked into it, and it seems you haven't submitted a marriage registration with Mike. However, since you live in his apartment and work at the shop his mother supported, legally, you're pretty much like a married couple, aren't you?" Hearing this, Mike turned to Mary in astonishment. "Huh? Mary, haven't you submitted the marriage registration yet? I remember you handed it to me, saying you'll take it to the city hall. What's going on?" Mike confronted her. Mary remained silent, wearing a slightly troubled expression. Then Simon continued, "Furthermore, Mr. Brown, you and Mary have been close friends since childhood, often staying at his house. Even now, you visit several times a week. What does this mean? Are you implying that you aren't siblings? If you have a romantic relationship, that's bigamy, right?" Hearing this, Mike exclaimed, "Ha! Bigamy? Isn't she your sister, Mary?" His voice changed the mood of the room. Mary, unable to handle the tension, burst out, "Wait a minute. Carter told me it's not a crime to deceive Mike, so I just helped him. Hey, hold on. Are you trying to blame everything on me?" Brown argued. Ignoring their argument, Simon added, "You got close to my brother for money, intentionally created this relationship, and are now in a bigamous situation. Sounds like marriage fraud." Brown hurriedly explained, "Wait, there's been a misunderstanding. But Simon was relentless, and the expensive wine you're buying here. You're reselling it on personal sites at high prices, aren't you? That could be a problem. Simon continued to calmly question the two. Realizing there was no way out, Brown, who had been aggressive until now, saying, "Wait a minute. I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention at all," and knelt down, bowing deeply in apology. However, after Simon patiently explained the situation, the two seemed utterly defeated. Overhearing this, Mike cheerfully said, "Really? Was I completely fooled? Simon, thanks for saving me." Simon tried to maintain a cool facade, but he seemed a bit embarrassed. Later, Simon warned, "But there might be a financial issue concerning those two and you, brother." Mike, feeling a mix of emotions, responded with confusion. "What do you mean? Don't scare me like that." Simon explained Mike's careless management due to Brown's influence and his turning a blind eye to Brown's wine dealings, which might cause monetary issues. Given Simon's past negative impressions of Mike, he hinted, "If you don't change your ways, we might not be looking at civil suits but criminal complaints." The three knelt and sincerely apologized to Simon. Simon, having heard rumors about Mary's past shady network businesses, had been cautious. He studied law in college and had a unique part-time job at a detective agency. His experiences and connections seemed to have come in handy. I was amazed by Simon's planning and execution skills. After graduating, he achieved his dream of becoming a lawyer. His investigative abilities were recognized by many. A traumatic experience from his childhood might have made him stronger, and seeing the mature Simon in contrast to Mike warmed my heart. Years later, it turned out that Simon never pressed charges. But it wasn't just from his kindness. He mentioned that there's a statute of limitations for fraud and there's no rush since they have all the evidence. He seems to be observing if they genuinely change their behaviors. To someone unfamiliar with the law like me, Simon's strategy seemed like a threat, but it did bring about a significant change in the three of them. All three of them began new lives filled with remorse. Mary cut her long brown hair and also trimmed the nails that she had gotten done at the nail salon and started working hard at nursing home. Brown, surprising everyone, shaved his colored hair and became a monk in a temple. Considering becoming a monk is not something one would ordinarily think of, the fear of legal action must be immense. Mike, my main concern, continues to run his wine bar, gradually rebuilding trust. His wine selection is commendable. Influenced by Simon's achievements, Mike now seems committed to his work. The wine bar, located at a prime spot I found, should thrive with a little hard work. If Mike truly turns his life around, I look forward to celebrating their ups and downs, perhaps even through a book about the wine bar's journey, with a toast alongside.